Good afternoon and welcome to Valley Views. I'm your host, Glenn Edison. We're certainly glad to have you. And as always, you can see our program on BTC Fiber's YouTube page and as well as their Channel 18 who sponsor our program. And today we have with us Bill Phillips. He's candidate for the Sequatchie County Sheriff's Office. And Bill, it's good to have you. Thank you for being with us.
Appreciate you. Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Let's go into a little detail, a little background so everybody will know. A lot of people know you, but I don't know if they know your background.
Okay. So I grew up down in the south end of the county, down around Dawes and Cartwright. Graduated from Sequatchie County High School in 1985. Came out of there, also was at back then, we had the Sequatchie Bledsoe Vocational Center. So I was going to be a welder. So I was going there my last couple years in high school, and then continued a couple years after high school, taking night courses there. Was certified in every kind of welding there was, I think, except for underwater welding at that time. And I was just too afraid of sharks to do that. But anyway, I was going to be a welder, and just took me a little while to figure out that back during that time, it was very difficult to find welding jobs in this area. So I had to travel a little bit to do some construction work, and got tired of that after a little while and decided it was time to settle down and find something more local. So one of our meeting places down the south end was David Cartwright's garage.
Oh, yeah.
Still is to some degree. I still see some of the old guys there, but was in there one morning, and an old guy from down there, Bud Cookston, was about a 25-year veteran at the Chattanooga Police Department at that time. And we were talking about the welding and how difficult it was to find jobs. And he says, "Why don't you come over to the police department and apply?" And I hadn't even dreamed of doing it at that point. But as a matter of fact, I wasn't even 21 yet. I was just 20. And so I ended up going and applying, and was selected to go into their next academy the next year. So started a little over a 28-year career there in law enforcement with the Chattanooga Police Department, which was a tremendous benefit to me, especially for what I'm wanting to do now, because the Chattanooga Police Department, a little while into my career, there became this thing called accreditation. So law enforcement agencies across the country can be accredited through the United States Department of Justice. And of course, the Chattanooga Police Department, being a mid-sized department, they have about 500 policemen there and a couple hundred civilians. They wanted to become an accredited agency. So we worked very, very hard for several years after that, achieving that. And then there are various levels of accreditation, and the Chattanooga Police Department is a gold accredited. So they have the top accreditation level that you can achieve through the Department of Justice. So I was fortunate enough to have gotten to be a big part of that, because by the time this was really becoming a thing, I was making it into the supervision ranks and over the homicide unit and all that, and was there are a lot of things that you have to do with your units. Every other year you have to present them with documentation of all these things that you're doing and all this, not only to achieve the accreditation, but then to maintain it. So we're able to do that. So I did everything there from, the undercover guy buying crack cocaine back in the late 80s to midnight shift patrol for about 5.5 years in the high crime areas of town.
But that was fun.
That was fun. My first year there, I think I was in Erlanger about 5 times. That was a lot of fun. But did that for about 5.5 years, and then in 1994 I was asked to join the homicide unit as an investigator, which I did, and ended up still being attached to that unit when I retired almost 23 years later.
Wow, that's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, and of course, as you know, when I was a rookie there, I met a young dispatcher named Wendy, now my wife of 30 years, and we now live, all of our kids are grown and out, but they're around the county here. We have 4 grown children, 5 grown children, 5 grandchildren, and Wendy and I live on Lewis Chapel Mountain. Proud longtime members of Way of the Cross Baptist Church.
Well, good. Now I know with your experience, you said 27 years. What it was?
A little over 28.
28.
Yeah,
28 years.
yeah.
I know you've seen everything from simple DUIs to, as later in the homicide, you saw a lot of different murders. And you also worked on a cold case file, did you not, that was televised?
I did. Worked on a part of the homicide unit is the cold case unit. So with the success that I had as a homicide investigator, I was eventually moved to what they call the lead investigator for the cold case unit. Did that for about, I think, 3 years before I was promoted, and then they kept me in investigations and just made me the supervisor of homicide and cold case. But of course, that is working the old cases, you know, that'd been around for a while. Got to work one case there with a outfit called Code Justice that comes on, and we were successful with that. It was a domestic case. I've actually worked another one with them recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've started an investigation company now, and working with Dunlap PD on a couple cases, and working with several other folks. But I've been able to work with them again. Matter of fact, talked to some of them this morning.
Well.
So we stay in touch. We talk about cases that I'm aware of that need assistance, and so yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Now I know with your 28 years of experience, you've done a lot of things. In other words, you've been to on different boards throughout your career, and been in a lot of things. Tell us a little bit about some of those things you've been active in.
Okay, so having moved up through the ranks in the investigative unit and the homicide unit specifically, I was, like I said, the investigator, primarily assigned to midnight shift investigations for the longest time, almost 10 years. And then I went to the cold case unit, did that for 3 years, and then made it to the supervision level. So with that came all of these boards, like you had the Child Fatality Review Board. I was a member of that one for the last 10 years of my career, as well as the Domestic Violence Fatality Review Board, the Domestic Violence Court Protocol Board. So what we did was we reviewed as many domestic violence fatality cases as we could, and then our next board set in and we decided on things that we could do through the court system as well as with law enforcement to try to educate the public on the dangers of domestic violence. You know, that's one of those things that a lot of, especially women, have a very difficult time getting out of.
Right.
And there are ways that we can help them get out, but we have to make that effort, and that effort was not being made. So we did things like that. Did the same thing with the Child Fatality Review Board. Also was on the Chattanooga Police Department's Administrative Review Board. So we reviewed everything that came out of the Internal Affairs Division and was going to the chief for either disciplinary action or non-disciplinary action. So I did that for 10 years. And we would review those cases, and then we would make our recommendation to the chief. So that was a lot of good experience. Worked a lot with the Internal Affairs Unit, and they basically would allow us to do our investigation first because we were doing the criminal part of it, and then they would kind of piggyback off of us to see what they need to do with their internal part. So working with them was a big plus in my career. Also was I learned early in my career the importance, I worked in Highland Park, which back in the late 80s and early 90s, that was the crack cocaine capital of Chattanooga. A lot of murders there, a lot of major crimes types cases, a lot of overdose deaths and those sorts of things. So, being out during the midnight shift hours, you see a lot of those people in those areas that don't like you. You know, and being a rookie officer, and that's all you see, you kind of begin to wonder, you know, do people around here really hate us this bad, you know? So we got to be a part of, they had a really aggressive neighborhood association there. Highland Park did, trying to take their neighborhood back, and did a really good job of it. It's actually a pretty nice place today. But we got to be a part of them, and it was kind of refreshing to see these people that were sleeping while I was there. Yeah. But in the daytime when I was at home in bed, there were these good people there who really supported the police and appreciate the police. And so that's where my appreciation for working with the communities came into play. And that was beneficial, that was very early in my career, like year one.
So you, community development and community relations is a big part of what you...
It is. I've got a website for the campaign. It's real simple. It's bill4sheriff.com. And on this website, I've got several programs listed there that I plan to initiate. And one thing that you'll notice on there is that several of those programs are community related, because it's just that important. A law enforcement agency cannot be successful if they're not communicating with and interacting with the communities, because that's where it's at. So if we continue to just let this divide exist, and I hear this all over the county when I go to these community centers and talk to people all over, knocking on doors or whatever, if we continue to let that exist, we just will never be successful with our law enforcement efforts.
Well, and that's important too, because if the community knows something about a crime or a criminal, they're more likely, if there's a good relationship, to tell you, say, hey, I know where this guy is, or I know this, who did this, or whatever.
Exactly. And that's, you know, I've been out knocking on doors all I can and all that throughout this campaign, and talking with people till late hours of the night. I've been standing on their porch with them, sitting at their kitchen table with them, and just, you know, all sorts of things. And that's the kinds of things that they tell me. They go, you know, we want to call, but we feel like that it didn't do us any good, and we don't feel like we know anybody that we call. You know, they don't know their neighborhood cop, and we need to change that.
Well, that sounds interesting for it.
Yeah.
Now, I know in other some of the other politicians that are running for public office, they talk a lot about the drug problem. I hear that over and over and over. I know that's a concern of yours.
It is a really big concern. The drug problem is our number one problem in my mind. Now, my view on it, because of what I can see from these law enforcement eyes, is that we have to prepare the sheriff's office to encounter that problem before we can be successful there. So that's a big problem, but we got to fix this to get there.
So the training.
Right. The training, the supervision, the management, there's a lot of things there that are going to have to be corrected. But yes, the drugs are the number one issue. You know, just the drug stories, and, you know, working with the Dunlap PD on these couple cases I am, and seeing what those guys are doing. I mean, it's just like, you know, it's almost like fishing in a barrel if you're looking for drugs, and that's really sad. I mean, you know, we've got such a great community here, and for it to be just that infested with drugs is really something that we need to work on. So one of the things that I have in there is a program that I've just kind of thought would be really good for us. And my feeling on that is I don't really see us with a concentrated effort to attack these drugs. It's just kind of like we're just dealing with them, like that's just kind of the new thing now, let's just deal with it. And I don't like that. I think we need to address it and try to correct as much of it as we can. So I have come up with this program, and we had a friendly little family competition to name it. My wife came up with a name, and she named it SAFE, S-A-F-E, and that's Sequatchie's Addiction-Free Environment. So this is, in my mind, this is an all-inclusive program. It starts out with the law enforcement efforts, so it's got like the top 5 list.
Right.
So I want to know who are the top 5 providers of drugs to our county, and I want those 5 people going to prison. And when one goes, number 6 gets to join the list. So eventually the word's going to get out that this is not a good idea for us to be doing this here. But it's all inclusive. Other than that, we have 30 million plus addicted people in America. Well, we can't house that many people.
No.
So it's real easy for us to fall into this. It's real easy for us to say, let's just lock them up, throw away the key. You hear that a lot,
Yeah.
But the reality is we can't lock up that many people, number one. Number two, that doesn't help them. It doesn't fix them. And they're going to come back out probably worse than what they were before.
Yes,
So we need programs that we can get these people some help with, and then hopefully having bridged that gap with the communities and develop that little bit of relationship. Hopefully we can get more and more of these people that now have some trust of us to come forward and say, hey, I need help. So we can get them on a path to help. Not something we do at the sheriff's office, but we
Right.
can guide them to the right place.
So it's recognizing you have a problem and then recognizing you need help.
Exactly. Yeah. The addict has to do that, and we'll be educating and putting that thought in their mind, because I think a lot of our addicts out here don't want to be addicts, but this thing now has control of their computer,
Yeah.
and they don't know how to get away from it. So they're going to need people like us to try to make an effort, So that's what the program's all about. It also has parts like, a mother and a father who just found their child, their 15-year-old, with a meth pipe, and they don't know what to do. They, never dreamed this would strike their home. That's happening all over the county.
Right.
We'll have other mothers and fathers who have been through this previously as a networking group that those people can now talk to, and they can tell them, hey, this is what you've got to look forward to. Don't be surprised when this happens. You need to really start looking at maybe doing this, because people really don't know what to do when this happens.
No, they get, first of all, they don't think it's going to happen to them.
Exactly.
It's not on their radar.
Yeah.
And then when it does happen, they're embarrassed.
Right.
And don't want people to know, because
Yeah.
they'll think bad of them, which they really won't. They want to help, but
Yeah.
this is something we all have to deal with. And
Yeah.
and the drugs, as we were growing up, marijuana was the big thing.
Right.
But now you got the fentanyl
Yeah.
and everything that's really some high-tech drugs.
Yeah, and with the fentanyl is just becoming more and more popular here, which is a really, really bad thing, because that's where the death toll really rises. So we've had enough here just like this year, but that number is going to get worse really quick, and so we've got to be aggressive in starting to get out and get after this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's if we don't, then it'll be in there. Not only, a lot of times we think it's just the high school, but the middle school will get it, and then
Right.
you'll get some child who's got a friend or a brother or sister in the middle school or high school, and then they'll get it at the elementary level.
Right.
And then it just goes.
Yeah, it spreads quickly, and it doesn't care how old you are. It doesn't care how much money your parents make. It doesn't matter your race or anything about it. So we have to have a concentrated effort, and that's the whole thing behind this SAFE program.
Well, and you mentioned that because as we mentioned a while ago about prison, jail is not for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the person who commits crime shouldn't go to jail
Right.
if that warrants, because sometimes that's the only alternative.
Yeah.
But like you said, if you want to turn them around, maybe jail or prison is not the place to do that.
Yeah, putting them in jail, and getting them, 36 days in jail this time, knowing that they're going to get out and 14 or 18 days later we'll probably be putting them back, is just not a good solution. So we need to look at getting these people some help. And now some of them don't want it yet, because they're not at that point.
Right.
And they're just going to have to continue to go to jail. There's nothing you can really do about that, until they get fed up, and hopefully that hits them before they end up dying, or they kill someone else or whatever.
Right.
But there are people out there that I think if we have a program like that kind of is an outreach, I think there are people that will go, hey, help me, So, and I think there are parents out there that will call us and go, hey, can you come and help my child?
Yes.
So I look forward to it. I think that'll be will be a big plus, and I really see this as something that. Once it's developed and it's operating, and we'll be working the kinks out and all that for a while, but I really see this as something that possibly a lot of surrounding agencies could be coming in and going, hey, can y'all show us how you did this?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I want to see.
Well, that's good, because I know the DARE program was introduced to the schools years ago, and that came out of Los Angeles, I believe.
Yeah. DARE program was a good program. It lived its lifetime and then changed into other things, and so this SAFE program I'm talking about, the SRO program, is a really big part of it. So what it would do is it would suck a lot of your volunteers from all over the county. So pastors is our number one target. School teachers are number two. Because the school teachers are the ones that deal with these kids daily.
Right.
And we've got to educate the kids as well as their parents, or people just continue to believe this is not going to happen to us. This is something that happens to other people, and then all of a sudden it's in their house.
Right. Well, we've had cases here where young people who've been on drugs got off, and then they got a pill that was laced with fentanyl and died because they didn't know it was. And that's the thing about the drugs, the uncertainty, because you don't know.
Yeah. So many of these other drugs are laced with fentanyl now, because every drug dealer wants to have the best drug of whatever it is they're selling. Right. Well, the fentanyl is what gives the best high in most drug addicts' minds. So a lot of these drugs, they think they're buying a Percocet or whatever it is. Well, it comes laced with fentanyl, and you don't really know how much is on there, and it takes just a very small amount to overdose a man your or my size. So imagine, some kid at the middle school that weighs 90 pounds, So it's an immediate danger, and we're doing this afternoon. Before tonight, there could be a death nearby. Yes. And they're all around us. I mean, they're happening every day. So it's got to be addressed.
Right, and a lot of times it's, we're not picking on any family, but a lot of times it's from families that you wouldn't expect. You think they're a good, I'm not trying to put them down, a good family. Yeah. But they don't know their child is going that way.
Yeah, it like I say, it doesn't discriminate. And, your child's friends that they've grown up with, and you've always known their parents, and they've always been good kids, and you don't know who they've met up with, and and then the next thing you know, they're showing your child something, and it just spreads like wildfire.
Now, what are other than that drug program you mentioned? What are some other things you'd like to see?
Well, as I mentioned, we have several programs on there. The first one on there is a partnership with pastors, and that is just to get as many pastors around this county as we can to come and join this list for us and be active with our sheriff's department. So, a lot of our law enforcement, they're the first ones that pull up on the really bad accidents, the vehicle accidents, or the house fire, or whatever it may be. So these people are seeing pretty regularly things that God just didn't make us to deal with. So having people like that we can call when needed. Also a family, one of these families we just talked about that, just found their child dead and, in the bed with an overdose or something. And maybe they don't have a home church, and we can get our little list out and find a pastor that can come down and sit with them and, whatever they need at that point. So we got that program with the pastors. I've got one that I came up, that I've put on there that's called the Constable Connection. And I've let the constables around town know that as far as, from what I can see and what I know about our constable system, the way it is today, it's a very broken system and it needs to be fixed, because it could be a big liability, not only for the constable, but for the county. You know, these are elected officials within the county, and it could be a big concern for people in the community, you know.
Right.
So this is a system where we kind of team up with our constables. We're always shorthanded in law enforcement, so why not team up with them, help train them with our people to some degree, and we'll have a system set up that they will have to agree with if they want to come on board and be part of it. And so what it does is, you know, through this, an agreement is, you know, 4 hours a month or whatever we come up with, they agree to ride with a deputy, you know, one night a month or something.
Yeah.
So I want them to be better trained, because if I've got a deputy that's out on the south end of the county and we have another 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever it is deputies working that day, but they're somewhere on the north end or up on one of these mountains, and that deputy gets into something bad, I want a constable nearby that can come help them and have that training and, you know, and that kind of thing. So I think it's a huge plus that it not only helps to take away from that liability that exists currently in my mind, but it also helps us with the potentially 9 more people that can help our officers. So why not, you know?
Right.
And most of the constables I've talked to, and they agree with this.
Oh, that's good.
So,
That's
yeah.
good. Well, they need training as well, and you know, they're not just a
Absolutely.
man with a gun.
Yeah.
And a badge.
A man with a gun and a badge should have some pretty good training.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, there's all kind of things that even police officers, when you get in situations, that adrenaline kicks in, and you don't know what you're going to do.
Yeah, and what happens at that point is training takes over. So if you don't have that training, then, you know, I don't know, maybe what you watched on that show last night takes over, or you know, and that's not good.
No.
So we need a training environment for not only our deputies, but it'd be really good if we could get these constables trained. And we won't be able to get them the degree that we do our deputies. I understand that.
Right.
But I want them to have a lot more than what they have right now.
And I was wondering, I know some programs across the country have I don't know exactly what they call it, but they have citizens that do ride-alongs. They're kind of like they're not actually patrolmen, but they're
right. Yeah. There are departments around the nation that have these various programs, and they call them different things depending on where you are. We had one at Chattanooga when I went to work there. It eventually washed out. That there are some good things to that, and there is some liability with it that you may not want to take on. So that's something that you have to really sit down with your local attorney and, you know, just say, is this something that's a good deal for us or not? Now, one other program, speaking of citizens, and in that way, one other program that we have on there is the Citizens Academy. And I'd really like to have that up and running, because what that does is, in law enforcement, just generally speaking, we don't do a really good job at educating the public on what law enforcement is really about. So what this is it's a 3-hour, 1 night a week academy for 10 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever we come up with. And people can sign up for it, and they, you know, have to put in an application and all that. And so what it does is they come in and they get to learn what law enforcement is truly about. And we'll show them examples of things so that they know this is why, you know, this, we're not just telling you this. So what this does is it really helps to bridge that gap, number one, between the community and law enforcement. But it also helps these people to understand when something bad happens, an officer's involved in a shooting, or, you know, some nasty looking thing goes out on Facebook with some
Right.
deputy involved in it or something. These people can then have some of the knowledge of what we have and understand how things happen like that, and may even go out to their friends and go, hey, you know, before you make a judgment, I would just, let's see what happened. You know, it'll help for people to just be informed on what we really do. It's been a really big plus for Chattanooga Police Department. They do them every year. They do a few every year, and it's a really big thing. They come in. We set up mock crime scenes and all kinds of things for them, and it's a really neat thing, and it's something that would really benefit our law enforcement as far as relationship with public.
Right, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, very much so.
Well, what else? You got anything else you'd like to add to what we're talking about that you haven't mentioned yet?
Well, I think one thing that's really important is, a lot of people started asking me back just a few weeks ago, as I guess they were getting ready for early voting or whatever, and they said, well, just what is Bill's vision? And I've actually got it written out, but I didn't bring it with me. But I wrote that out and I posted it on Facebook, and it's on just my regular Bill Phillips Facebook account. Somewhere there on my wall, it's there. But it just talks about how, I see a department where policy and procedure dictates. I think that's very important. Where professionalism is mandatory, and it's not just something we would just like to see. It's gonna happen. Where accountability is dished out the way it should be, so that when somebody does something wrong, they're held accountable for it, and when they do something right, they're recognized and rewarded as they should be, especially when they go above and beyond, which many of these guys and gals do every day, and they should be recognized, because a lot of them really feel like that they don't get any recognition or any appreciation, and that's a big part of the turnover issue. But we need supervision that can lead by example. We need management that can lead by example. And these are all things that we will bring. I know 100% it's all things that we can do. I know there are good people here who want this to be a really good sheriff's department, and I look forward to the opportunity to help them build that.
Well, appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
Anything else?
That's about it, I guess.
All right. Well, folks, again, you can see this interview on BTC Fiber's YouTube page as well as BTC Fiber's Channel 18. So until next time, have a good day. Hey everybody, this is Glenn Edison from Valley Views. We appreciate you watching our shows, and we would like for you to like, share, and follow us on Facebook, as well as like and subscribe to our YouTube page.
Brought to you by Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative, your full-service telecommunications provider right here in the Sequatchie Valley.